We have some reporters there on scene just to explain a little bit more about what is happening. Michelle Ross and Robert Moses have been following this all morning long. Robert, let's start with you real fast. As we talk about what happened this morning, he was in a Pennsylvania courtroom listening especially to two hearings. One was that gun charge. The other one was extradition to New York, which his lawyers did expect him to do. So was this a surprise or no?
Yeah, Bianca, this was not a surprise. The first hearing at 8:30, the second one started late. It was supposed to start about 9 o'clock. Started more like 9:45, and my colleague Michelle Ross was in the courtroom for both of those hearings, the one at 8:30 and the one at 9:45. Kind of take us through how Luigi Mangione behaved. I saw him walk in this morning. He was remarkably calm. How was he in the courtroom?
Right, so that remarkably calm attitude continued into the courtroom. We were talking about it earlier, how he had an outburst the first time that he came in, but this was a completely different mindset. He came in, he looked well put together, despite being in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He was clean shaven. His hair has grown out a little bit, his curly hair, but once he sat down, he wasn't as fidgety as he was the first time around, but he was sitting in his seat. He was alert. The first time he was counting the number of people in the courtroom, but this time he did do a scan, but he was alert. He wasn't, interrupting anyone. Last time he interrupted his defense attorney, but this time he was listening and he was going with everything that was happening in the courtroom.
And we were also talking about the fact that that whole front row in the courtroom of about 100 or so seats was occupied by NYPD officers. Right. So clearly the NYPD was ready to go for this eventuality today of him waiving extradition.
Exactly. Considering that the crime happened in New York City, the NYPD was ready to extradite him. They've been in contact with such a big case like this. So many different agencies are in touch with each other. They're talking to the DA's office, even with the defense attorneys, with the attorneys back in New York City, with the DA back in New York City. So about 12 to 13 NYPD personnel in the front row ready to take him back to New York.
And let's talk about that process, because I know you and I have been talking to sources about how that's going to work.
Right.
You spoke to someone yesterday, I spoke to someone this morning, and kind of the general tenor is the same, and that is that Luigi Mangione will be driven to the airport, which is about 25 minutes or so from here, the Altoona Blair County Airport. It's a small airport, of course, and he will then be flown back to New York City, where conceivably he could appear before a judge, early this afternoon. I think we're just hearing.
Yeah, we just heard some police sirens, so this could be.
So he might be
exiting
actually
from this area and then heading to the airport, like you mentioned. But an NYPD source did tell me last night that flying is the preferred way of transport. It's less risky, it takes less time, and he'll get there quicker. So it's definitely a preferred way to go there.
And also there's the whole spectacle aspect of it. My source said this morning, we don't want him driving for 5 hours and potentially people lining the route with signs, and we've already seen supporters out here
with
this
signs
morning
here saying that he's been charged with terrorism. We see some police lights here, with some emergency lights taking place. But they're now going around the other way. But yes, we've seen signs, with the terrorism charges now included in his first-degree murder charges, some of the signs here saying that, killing people under health care is terrorism. So we've seen so many supporters here. It makes sense why, the risk would be taking him on the road by car.
And in fact, we're just looking at some video of Mangione leaving the courthouse as we speak. So again, the plan, according to our sources, is to take him to the airport, which is about a 25-minute or so drive. And forgive me, we're just kind of looking off camera to see the activity, but it looks like they're going the other way.
We saw a few cars just zoomed away, so they could be on their way now.
So the plan is to go to the airport, fly him back to New York City, where he will presumably appear before a judge today. Let's talk about the fact that now he's facing not only the state charges, but now potentially federal charges as well.
Right, so that's something that could happen later on. And so with these serious charges in New York, Alvin Bragg wants him processed as soon as possible. So we'll see how that plays out as early as, it could even happen before noon, depending on how quick they get to the airport and then fly over.
And the significance with the federal charges, of course, is that he becomes eligible for the death penalty.
Right.
The maximum sentence under the state charges would be life in prison without parole, but if he's charged federally, he could be looking at the death penalty, which just ratchets this case up even more.
Right, and then with his Pennsylvania charges, I mean, they're also very serious charges, but they would be minor compared to what he's facing federally and at the state level back in New York State.
And the Pennsylvania charges, I think we should hit on that. I mean, there's sort of a subtext in this whole thing, but they were the subject of that first hearing that started at 8:30, and now it's kind of an afterthought because everyone is understandably focused on the murder charges in New York. But he has a next court appearance here, conceivably on those Pennsylvania charges.
Right, and they pushed that to February 24th. They said that he's not waiving his right to that hearing. He's just reserving that right for a later date. And Thomas Dickey, his defense attorney, said that he wanted some evidence in exchange to push that hearing. So the DA gave him, they wanted to expedite the delivery process. So the DA gave him essentially a 20-page police report that they said had information as recent as this morning. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of months as the court case in New York plays out.
And the charges here in Pennsylvania, of course, the carrying a gun without a license. So he had the purported murder weapon on him in McDonald's, and also that fake New Jersey driver's license also on him that he used to check into the hostel. So now this story sort of shifts away from here and back to New York with the potential of an arraignment. Our understanding is it could happen this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be, and that's exactly what Alvin Bragg said a couple of days ago, that their hope is to get him processed and arraigned and then start preparing for a trial if there will be one.
The scene here was pretty remarkable this morning. I know you got to witness it inside. Outside, we happened to be one of the police officers let us. He clearly should not have, but he led us into that back alley right as Luigi Mangione was pulling in. Several squad cars, the SUV backed up to that rear entrance. You know, it was very buttoned up. He maybe had 6 or 7 feet to go from the car into the courthouse. It was they wanted to make sure this happened just so.
Right, and it's funny to hear that color from outside, how seriously they were taking it outside, and they were taking it very seriously inside. But I would say that the court officers that were surrounding him were a little more casual. I was telling you earlier how during that break, as we were waiting for the extradition hearing, Luigi Mangione was reading papers on his desk. It could have been the police report, but he was skimming through papers, and he turned around and he asked the court officer a question, and the court officer was very casual with him, smiling at him as he was answering those questions. So there's that aspect of, you have to be a bit charming in a way if you are a defendant accused of murder to get a court officer to smile at you and to laugh at you. And we have seen the response on social media. I know it's not what prosecutors want to hear, that the person that they're prosecuting is charming, but we have seen this response on social media erupting in support of him.
Well, it's an unmistakable part of this story. I mean, there's a magnetism to Luigi Mangione that you just can't deny, and I think a lot of people have kind of seized on that. It's also remarkable to me I mean, there have been a lot of supporters out here, people wearing the green Luigi hats and praising him for this alleged heinous act, premeditated, heinous act. I can't remember a story where, at least in recent memory, where the alleged killer is lionized like this one.
Right, and Jessica Tisha said that the response has been appalling. The NYC commissioner has said that they've seen posters that have been posted, plastered all over the areas with other CEOs threatening them. But it's not only his brazen, alleged message that he sent in this alleged killing that people are praising, but it's also his looks that they're also praising as well. So there are two aspects to this story. It's people angry with the American healthcare system, and then people also romanticizing his looks.
So that's kind of the story from here. Bianca will send it back to you if you have anything else you want to chat about. But quite a day out here.
Absolutely, Robert. I would really hope that maybe you could expand a bit more on this, because I feel like a lot of people had questions as to why the New York prosecutors used a terrorism law in the charges against Luigi Mangione. I feel like a lot of people were surprised by that, and maybe you could figure out how they came to that tactic.
Well, Bianca was asking about the terrorism charges and why why terrorism? And I think that there are a couple answers to that. First of all, statutorily, it's laid out if you do something to sort of further a political end, that can qualify as terrorism. But also, and this is such a basic answer, but I think we forget the root word of terrorism is terror.
Right.
And this killing was meant to inflict terror. It happened on the morning of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting, as you know, as Alvin Bragg pointed out, people were going to work and going about their day, and tourists were getting ready to go out and shop and the whole thing. And this really was terrifying as well.
Right. And it's something that I have a lot of conversations with, that you know, people of my background, being of Middle Eastern background, because a lot of people mistakenly think that terrorism is only overseas.
Yes.
But it's not. We have domestic terrorism, and we can see that in this particular case that it's being pursued with Luigi Mangione. So exactly the point that you made, you know, invoking terror, sowing terror in the middle of Midtown, you know, before commuters, before it becomes the busy area that it is known for.
Yeah, exactly. And we're looking at video. We may still be looking at video of Luigi Mangione leaving. But yeah, I think when I'll speak for myself, when I think of terrorism, the first thing that jumps to mind is 9/11 or the 93 bombing or whatever. But this is just as much terrorism as that is.
Exactly. It doesn't depend on the number of people killed or you know, targeted. It's really dependent on the intent behind it. And we during the press conference that the you know, DA had held, he said that this was also meant to kind of, you know, intimidate a population as well, and this is also in a way kind of galvanized a population.
I think the unfortunate thing is we've sort of obsessed about Luigi Mangione, and how many times have we uttered the name of Brian Thompson?
Right.
It's just, it gets, somehow the victim really gets lost in this story. You know, the prosecutors made a point of that the other day. Bragg said, look, we have a very robust sort of victim support system, and that's another side of this story, but we can't forget Brian Thompson's loved ones who are left behind to just watch this spectacle.
Right, and that's something they stressed during that press conference. You know, they said that we shouldn't forget who was the victim in this case, and that was Brian Thompson, and they continuously sent their condolences to his family.
And we can talk about the practices of the health insurance industry and all that, but certainly this is not the way to address any sort of concern.
Right, and they have said, authorities have said that anyone who targets someone, who goes out to kill someone, is a danger to society, which is why they're moving through with this case and taking it seriously, and why he's on his way to New York City right now.
Michelle, great work inside. Great being with you, and we appreciate all the work out here. Bianca, if you have anything else for us, we'll send it back to you.
We'll have more coming up on the noon, but I really do appreciate the work that you guys are doing out there in the field. Again, as we're wrapping this up, we're here learning that Luigi Mangione waived extradition. He will be heading back to New York to face a judge in the death of United Healthcare CEO